United against ad breaks. All right, let's hear what Tucker Carlson has to say.
Welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. This is a Fox News Alert. One of the most extraordinary moments in the history of social media is unfolding right now as we speak. And it began when Elon Musk took control.
Extraordinary. Just absolutely extraordinary moment. It was just so
Twitter.
so
When he
extraordinary.
bought the company, he promised to reveal its corruption, the extent to which Twitter had engaged in politically motivated censorship, including the unlawful, the illegal censorship of American citizens at the direction of the U.S. government. Well, tonight, less than an hour ago, Musk began to make good on that promise. Twitter shared a trove of internal documents with Matt Taibbi of Substack. Those documents are coming out again as we speak, and what they prove so far is very serious. Those documents show a systemic violation of the First Amendment, the largest example of that in modern history. These documents show that, among other things, political officials in the Democratic National Committee were directing censorship at Twitter ahead of the 2020 election. One Twitter official wrote on October 24th, 2020, that he had received, quote, an additional report from the DNC. So the DNC was telling Twitter what to pull off the site, and Twitter was complying. The next morning, to prove it, a Twitter official confirmed the post had been deleted. I grabbed the first one, that Twitter employee wrote. Twitter was also following instructions directly from the Biden campaign in the final days of the presidential campaign. One of the documents proves that officials on the Biden team routinely directed Twitter to remove posts that reflected poorly on Joe Biden. Quote, more to review from the Biden team, read one internal email from a Twitter employee just days before the 2020 election. That email included a list of several Twitter accounts that had criticized Joe Biden. The reply, quote, handled. We just checked. Now, those accounts remain suspended today. So Twitter was permanently censoring users at the request of the DNC and the Biden campaign. That is new. Many suspected it. Now it has been absolutely confirmed by internal documents. And of course, the New York Post Twitter account was banned. Why? Because they had a story that might have changed the outcome of the 2020 election, and Twitter knew that perfectly well. They had accurate information about Hunter Biden's laptop. The Post's reporting directly implicated Joe Biden and the Biden family in an ongoing scheme to sell influence, to leverage Biden's job as a government official, to sell the prestige and the power of the U.S. government to China and Ukraine. That scheme, that ongoing scheme that unfolded over years, made the Biden family millions of dollars. 10% of that money was reserved, as you know, for the big guy, meaning Joe Biden. So that was information that might have changed the outcome of the election. And that is precisely why Twitter prevented its users from reading it. Twitter went so far as to block its users from privately sharing the New York Post story on Twitter direct message. So anyone attempting to share the story about Hunter Biden's laptop was told it was unsafe. Now, that measure, preventing users from sharing information privately, is something that Twitter reserves in normal circumstances only in the most extreme cases, Taibbi writes, like stopping the transmission of child pornography. But in this case, information that might have hurt Joe Biden's chances of becoming president were invoked. And they were applied even to the sitting president's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. Internally, Taibbi writes, quote, the decision was made at the highest levels of the company, but without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey, with former head of legal policy and trust Vijaya Gotti playing a key role. All suspected now.
I think it's pretty funny, see, all things considered, when you know what the actual story is, as I described adequately, to turn around and have like the most famous propagandist in the country be like, Hunter Biden's cock is the most important story that could have turned the outcome of the most famous election of all time. Back in the day, we used to know if a president had a fat hog. What's going on? If I want to see the thick, juicy, veiny cock of the son of the future former president, Joe Biden, I should be able to do so. After all, free speech in the United States of America is a value that we abide by. And that value should include Hunter Biden's veiny meat snake. LBJ had a fat one. Dick Cheney was called Big Dick Cheney for a reason. Hunter Biden also has a juicy one that we should know about.
Now confirmed. Now, in public, Twitter and its many allies and the rest of the media claimed that the New York Post story violated the hacked materials policy that Twitter had on its books. But internally at Twitter, everyone understood that was just a pretext. The laptop had not been hacked, and it wasn't of Russian origin. And by the way, as of right now, it's 8:04 Eastern Time. There is no evidence in this ongoing thread from Matt Taibbi that Twitter had received confirmation from the U.S. government even that the laptop was fake or from Russia. They just made it up. According to Taibbi, one official admitted that, quote, hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone at Twitter realized that wasn't going to hold, but no one had the guts to reverse it. One communications official at Twitter, Trenton Kennedy, wrote this, quote, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this, the laptop story, as unsafe. Twitter's former head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, explained that Twitter had to censor the story so that Donald Trump would not be reelected president. Quote, the policy basis is hacked material, though, as discussed, this is an emerging situation where the facts remain unclear. Given the severe risks here and the lessons of 2016, meaning Trump could get elected, we're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing this content from being amplified. Now, this...
Wait, what? Hasan, the propaganda is on the left and he doesn't even know it. Hasan is a propaganda on the left and he doesn't even know it. Wait, what? Bro, I don't know if you know this, but I literally had a show on the Young Turks called Agitative Propaganda. No, the difference between me and like these fucking dickheads like Tucker Carlson is that, like, one, I'm honest about my perspective. I admit my biases, and I don't have to shelter the truth. Tucker Carlson, unfortunately for him, but I guess fortunately for society, can't openly fucking say, what he truly means. He's a WASP nationalist. He's like a racist person. He can't truly say all of those things. I can, though. I can tell you the logical conclusion of my worldview. Because his utopian society is a dystopia that revolves around ethnic expulsions, okay? On the nicest way that I can, most charitable way I can approach the conversation. Mine revolves around emancipation from the shackles of capitalism and everyone being able to have a life of dignity. Tucker Carlson gets paid by corporate America to say this unhinged nonsense to the tune of $30 million a year. I get paid by you. Whether it's when I serve an ad, whether it's when you subscribe, or even, I don't know. And that's it. That's it. When you subscribe and when I serve you an ad, that's pretty much it. No, I'm not doing a segue right now.
Played out to some extent in public. Now we know what was happening within Twitter. But the whole country knew that something was being censored. A lot of people couldn't read it, but it was widely known that Twitter was censoring this. And so, by the way, were many other news organizations. And at that time, Twitter received a communication from a consultant in Washington who had taken an informal poll of members of Congress, Democrats. And the message this person sent to Twitter was, Democrats in Congress support the censorship. And we're quoting, they don't think the First Amendment is absolute. In other words, sitting members of Congress were encouraging censorship to affect the outcome of a presidential election. That is illegal. It is effectively election rigging. And it is a direct attack on our Bill of Rights by people who have sworn to uphold the Bill of Rights. You got to hope someone will be held accountable for this. So back to the documents. Within Twitter, others, presumably all voting Democrats, but some with some integrity, kept raising questions about it.
Buddy, Taibbi was talking about how the entire media sphere shut this story down and called it fake Russian hacking. The real problem is that the libs have the power to do this. It was never about Hunter's dick pics. Buddy, I'm not your buddy, pal. Taibbi is talking about a thing that the entire media sphere was wrong on, that the platform itself admitted that it was wrong on, that I have said the media should not have done. Why are you coming to me and literally repeating things that I am already aware of and recognize? Not only have I recognized it, though, very early on, because I made my opinion very clear, okay? But also, Jack Dorsey himself very shortly after was like, oh yeah, this was fucked up. We fucked it up. Ultimately, though, that's big tech overreach. Okay? However, the story itself is a nothing burger. That's the issue, which is why no one is talking about the contents of the fucking story itself. And when I bring up the contents of the story itself, you go, well, actually, the story is about big government overreach over big tech. Yeah? Because the story itself is a nothing burger. That's the point. If the larger story is Twitter's suppression of fucking truth, which I think it is the larger story, then the story itself is just about Hunter Biden's penis. But the problem is, a lot of mentally ill right-wingers on the timeline are both simultaneously talking about how big of an overreach this was by the Democratic Party because they don't fully understand what actually happened, while also simultaneously saying, oh my God, it was actually like, really, big revelations that happened in the fucking leaks. No, there wasn't. There was no revelations. I'll say it like this. We got lucky. We got lucky. We got lucky that this time there was nothing that was actually a big, a big news story that big tech was able to suppress. Okay? That's my take. The fact that Twitter did this is bad. And I'm not talking about like taking down Hunter Biden's penis photos. Like, that's not. If you want those up, you're a fucking weirdo, okay? But like shutting down the New York Post story and like banning people for promoting it and all this shit, that's unacceptable. You will not hear pushback from me on that point. But we already knew that that happened. And we already knew that that was wrong. They fucked up. And it's scary that they can do such a large scale fuck up. But if you come in here and then you try to like relitigate this story while simultaneously being like, well, dude, but you don't understand, like the contents of that laptop held, secret information that is really important. Well, then you're wrong.
This. Former Vice President of Global Communications, Brandon Borman, asked, quote, can we truthfully claim...
By the way, we all knew all of this before Matt Taibbi's leak, so I don't know. Nothing came out of this.
This is part of the policy. In other words, is this consistent with the rules? Then the general counsel of Twitter, Jim Baker, that would be the former FBI general counsel, who was directly involved in the FBI's interview with Michael Flynn when his life was destroyed for political reasons, signed off on the continued censorship. The former FBI official signed off. Quote, caution is warranted, said Baker. Let's hope we hear from Mr. Baker in a congressional hearing very soon. So throughout all of this, the record shows, at least as of right now, only one elected official in the entire Democratic Party, that would be Ro Khanna of Silicon Valley, a Democrat, voicing any concern at all. So Khanna reached out to Vijaya Gotti, and here's what he wrote. This seems to be a violation of the First Amendment principles. And I say this as a total Biden partisan. But he was completely blown off by Vijaya Gotti. By the way, good for him. He's a liberal, too, but apparently sort of a real one. Within days, someone called Carl Szabo at the research firm NetChoice advised Twitter executives that on Capitol Hill...
He's right. That's why he's saying, no. He's saying... the principles of the First Amendment. He's not saying the First Amendment Please don't be a dumb fucking Fox News watching Andy. Tucker is not making that distinction because he's a propagandist, and a very effective one at that. Rokana is correct. What Twitter did in that regard is actually not in the spirit of the First Amendment, which is something that everyone kind of like abides by. You know what I mean? That is an actual violation. If Twitter was publicly owned, if Twitter was owned by the government and they suppressed that information from going out, that would be an actual violation of the First Amendment. Okay? No, I'm not talking about the penis now. There are two different stories at play here. One is the DNC or like Biden campaign people utilizing the access that they have to the trust and safety people to just say, hey, delete these fucking tweets. It has Hunter Biden's penis. That's revenge porn. That's normal. Twitter taking the initiative, taking matters into their own hands and suppressing a story about Hunter Biden's laptop not being released on Twitter, specifically because they think there's hacked material, which they understood wasn't hacked, and then allowed the story to continue being spread. But the process in which they didn't actually let the story go out originally was wrong. It was a gross oversight. None of it is a violation of the First Amendment, but it is a violation of the principle of the First Amendment, which, you expect companies to abide by. Not talking about the revenge porn, talking about actually a fucking redacted news story about the laptop's contents not being allowed to be covered on a platform, on a major platform. The New York Post article should have continued. Don't say la 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 boo boo. It's a private company. Who cares? Now, lucky for us and for everyone in general, if you care about like big tech overreach or whatever, that the story itself or the contents of the laptop itself were nothing. Like it literally wasn't anything that the right tried to claim it was. Okay? Which is why they're focusing on the story suppression aspect. But we already knew the story suppression aspect was unjustifiable, and we already talked about it. So it's not new.
Democrats were very happy with this. They supported the censorship. So as we said, this thread exposing internal documents from Twitter, as transcribed with commentary by Matt Taibbi, is still ongoing. It is still flowing forth as we speak, and we'll bring you new information as it comes.
What about the sex trafficking allegations? Yeah, I don't think that's real, man.